Paltrocast. Aside from having to do press, good day for you so far?
Yeah, it's been good.
Well, we were connected to talk about the score that you did for the Walking Dead series, but there's so much else to talk about. I first became familiar with your work when I was on the management team for OK Go, and you did a remix of This Too Shall Pass, which was fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
What exactly was your transition from being band guy to composer?
Oh, good question. It was definitely a bit of a leap of faith. I mean, I studied film scoring in college before Passion Pit started, so it was always a focus of mine. It's just when Passion Pit started, I was young and it was like, I was in a band. I want to go do that. Let's go on tour and have fun, see the world and play music.
Yeah.
But as even just like a couple years already into tour, I already started feeling like I will really want to work in film in some way. I wasn't necessarily a filmmaker, but I was obsessed with film, the like concept of filmmaking and like how people got that done. And then I was also playing music all the time and writing music. So it was a hard decision to leave the band and jump into this, especially because at that point, anyone who knew me only knew me as Ian from Passion Pit.
Yeah.
But I'm super grateful that I did it, and I'm very happy with how my career's been going for the past almost decade now that I've been out of the band, which is crazy to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a big leap of faith of like really feeling in my gut like this was the right thing to do, and I wasn't meant to be on the road touring my whole life. So now I sit in a studio all day.
Well, you modestly, when you said I studied that in college, that college is Berklee. And I find that most people who went to Berklee, who went on to success, did not graduate from Berklee. They dropped out. Did you graduate?
I actually graduated.
Whoa. Okay.
I'm one of the brave few.
When you were in Berklee, who were some of your peers that we may know? Like when you go down the list of people who went to Berklee over the years, you see Stacey Jones, who plays with American Hi-Fi, and Matchbox 20, Miley Cyrus, and Laboriel Jr., and Aaron Lee Tashian, and Melissa Etheridge, etc. Anyone we know that you went to school with?
Yeah, Sarah Schachner, huge video game composer, and she scored Prey last year, which was super great. She was a year ahead of me. Chaim Mazar, we actually worked at the film scoring labs together. Matthew Llewellyn is Brian Tyler's main music editor. And then, of course, my wife, Sophia Hultquist, who goes by Drum and Lace. That's where we met. We started dating our last year of college. There's more too, I'm blanking, but it was actually like a good group. Yeah, it's a good group of people.
If you said, Darren, who did you go to Hofstra University with as a commuter? I don't know. I didn't talk to anybody, but it's great to see that you're running into people from college years later in a positive way, including your wife.
Yeah.
Now, the Walking Dead score, something I'm very curious about. There's always secrecy behind the Walking Dead stuff because it's such a strong fan community. So everything's kept really tight. They don't finish stuff 6 months in advance. It seems like they finish everything a couple of days before it goes to air. So in your case, when you're composing, how much of the show do you have in front of you?
When I first got hired, I only had the scripts because I actually hadn't shot yet. I got hired very early on. But I was very involved. Like once things got rolling, I was getting cuts of episodes and I was fully scoring to full episodes in front of me. I was thankfully not kept out of the loop. I feel like if they'd kept me in the dark, I probably would have had to speak up because I need to know, I need to know what's going on. Like it's okay to keep the fans in the dark until we're ready. But yeah, I like to be as involved as possible in everything when it comes to the story and what's going to happen.
So you were writing without any visuals?
At the very beginning, I wrote a 10-minute suite for Eli Journet, the showrunner, just solely based off the scripts and our conversations about where we wanted to go with the music. But then once they started shooting, I was getting episode cuts and I was actually writing cues to picture. Although a few bits of that suite eventually did make it into the show. So some things I wrote away from picture did end up in there, which is always a nice coincidence when it actually works out.
When they're saying, hey, we want you to score the show, did they base it off of a particular project that you worked on? Or did they just say, hey, Ian, you do you?
It was mostly they wanted me to go with my gut. I mean, we talked about ideas and a general direction, and a really big point of reference at the beginning, which I think is what sparked Eli's whole idea in the first place, was The Walking Dead meets Escape from New York. And I think it definitely evolved past that. I mean, went into a new territory, but that was really the initial like driving point. It's like The Walking Dead has never really had like a synth score before. It's always been a very organic, like some synths mix in, but like always very organic based. And we really wanted to do something that just sounded totally different from anything that anyone heard in this universe. And that came down to everything: production design, cinematography, direction. They really put a lot of thought and effort to how they wanted to present this world to everybody.
When you're writing, and I'm asking you this with a background of synths behind you, does everything get written on synth, MIDI, that thing, or some of it guitar?
Sometimes it's guitar. A lot of it is keyboard. There's a keyboard actually built into my desk that I'm sitting at right now. And a lot of what I do is just in the computer, which is like very boring to say, but it's just the truth. And I think that goes for a lot of composers nowadays. But these do get used. I don't necessarily always start with these. They usually come in later to embellish or replace like a soft synth that I'm using, just because these sound better usually. But it depends how much time I have. It depends like what mindset I'm in. Because if you turn these on, like you will get lost sometimes, and you might have a really fun hour working on them, but you're not getting anything done that you're supposed to be writing. And I do like to move pretty quickly. But it depends on the project. Some things I do start on guitar because for the longest time, that was my primary instrument. But I do spend most of my time sitting here at the keyboard. So that's kind of just what I jump to at first.
So a lot of the people that you toured with in the quote heyday of Patch and Pit, I use quotes because obviously the music that you're doing right now is heard by more people. You're doing excellent and all that. So it's funny to think that a lot of people are going to go, hey, whatever happened to that guy? I bet things are tough for him. And you're like, nope, Ian's doing just fine. But a lot of the people that you worked with or toured with are now themselves scoring shows. We see the MGMT guys, Steve Schiltz from Longwave, he's scoring stuff, etc. When did you start to realize that the people scoring the TV shows were all dudes who used to have record deals?
Pretty quickly. I mean, you look at Danny Elfman and Oingo Boingo, and even Hans Zimmer, was playing in, I know the song, but what's the actual band name? Who did TV Killed the Radio Star?
He was in the Buggles?
Yes. Yeah, he's in the music video. He's playing synth in that music video.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. So he was doing like arranging and synthesizers for people. James Newton Howard started as a keyboard player for I'm forgetting, a big like 70s, 80s like crooner songwriter. Even John Williams like started off playing in bands. Like he would like play in sessions as a piano player,
Oh yeah. Well, my favorite one of them these days, Jeff Cardoni, was in Alien Crime Syndicate, and now he's scoring like 8 shows at the same time all the time.
Yeah. Jeff Russo was in was it Tonic? That was the band he was in.
I didn't know that one. Fred Curry from Cinderella is scoring a lot of stuff. So
yeah, I think
it's genreless, but in your case, a lot of the people that you toured with, a lot of your peers also doing that same thing. So it's something that you knew about before that became you?
I knew it was a path that some people took. I never thought it was something I could do because I just like my orchestral knowledge was limited at the time. It's better now, but I only knew so much about music, and I felt like my compositional skills were limited. So I didn't think it was something I could actually like make happen. But thankfully, I fully, when I did start and like transition from the band, I fully started from the bottom. I literally was cold emailing people I went to high school with that I knew were in LA or New York doing some kind of media. And I would literally be like, if you have any short film, commercial, anything, I will write for free. Just like, I need to try this to see if I can do it.
Right.
And thankfully a few people like very graciously were like, yeah, sure, give it a shot. I think at the time, because I was in the band, that opened a couple of doors for me that probably wouldn't have opened if I was just like somebody off the street. So I'm super grateful for that. But at the same time, once I left the band, I tried to never mention that because I just wanted to be like, now I'm just Ian. I don't want to like use this as when I was in the band, it was okay to like use that as like I'm representing the band, but like when I'm out of it, it's like I'm done with it. It's just me now. Um, but yeah, it is the band to scoring path is very popular, and yeah, I can't tell you how many people for a while were emailing me being like, I really want to get into scoring, like how do I do it? And I think it's just because touring is really hard and it's exhausting, and as you get older, it gets harder and harder. So everyone's looking for a way to be creative and still make music and hopefully make a living.
Yeah, it's the exact opposite hours, I would have to assume, because there's daylight behind you, even though I believe you're in London,
I am, yeah.
that it's not such a nocturnal career unless you want it to be.
Yeah. It's weird. I actually thrive off of like a 9 to 5 schedule a bit. Well, I'm more like if I'm busy, it's like a 9 to 5 and then like an 8 to midnight. That's my writing hours. But there are some people who still very much treat it like I think Hans Zimmer like famously like doesn't like to get started till like 6 p.m. and works till like 4 a.m. or something like that. He's like a night owl from what I've heard.
Wow.
So you can do what you want with it, but I find that like I actually am like an old-fashioned person that way. It's like wake up, grab my coffee, and go to work.
So old, Ian. Well,
Yeah.
2 quick questions, and then I'll let you go. And the first one is, I find that most of the composers for TV, Walking Dead people included, were hard rock people at the beginning of their music appreciation. Were you ever a hard rock or metal person?
Not super hard rock. Sorry, ambulance behind me. Not super hard rock, but I was into like new metal. Like I was really into Incubus for a long time. And like my friends were into Metallica and Dream Theater and stuff. So like I experienced all of that through them. I wouldn't necessarily jump out to listen to it, but like I absorbed a lot. All of my friends were musicians growing up. Like we were all playing guitar in bands together. So we were just feeding each other everything all the time. And it's funny because this score is actually has some like the heaviest rock sounding stuff I've done before, which I did not set out to do at first. It's just we kept getting we set out to do a synth score, and then I end up in these scenes with the freaking like Walker King, and I'm like, I need to sort of guitars. I have to go there. Like I don't know where else to go. It just calls for it.
I mean, Sting goes to the loot. Sting is never wrong. But the last question I have for you, because besides this fascinating career of band to composer, you also have had Little Twig Records, which is putting out soundtracks in a day and age when usually things only get the soundtrack treatment when it's a major artist. So it's great to see that you've got that niche going. Well, what's coming up next for you as a composer with Little Twig, et cetera? Because we were connected to promote this Walking Dead soundtrack, which Sony Masterworks is putting out. But plug away, tell us everything about what we should know, Ian.
Yeah, I started Little Twig as an outlet. So when I was doing smaller projects that didn't necessarily like a studio wouldn't necessarily want to put out, like if they gave me a permission, I could still get it released that way. We actually haven't done a release in a long time. And that's because thankfully everything I've worked on recently has had a soundtrack release.
Yes.
So it's funny, like I was actually looking at earlier today. I don't think we've had a release since 2021. But because I released a couple of soundtracks for my friend John Natchez that year. But everyone has been able to get soundtrack releases lately. I think all the studios finally realized like, oh, this is a good thing. Because for the longest time, like Netflix wouldn't want to put out a soundtrack. I'd be like, you have to realize this is like such a good thing for you, for the project, for the composer, for the fans. Like they all want it.
And you own it too. There's no cost.
Yeah.
It's $59 for the year on TuneCore. That's it.
Yeah, like oftentimes I'll literally master it myself. I have someone that does the artwork. It's like, this will cost you nothing. I literally just need you to say yes. So I don't know when the next Little Twig soundtrack will be, but I do have a project that I finished a few months ago, which is a new film by Hannah Marks called Turtles All the Way Down. And it's based on the novel by John Green. It stars Isabella Merced. I'm really, really proud of that film and my score. So I'm hoping it gets a release date soon. Like, fingers crossed. It's been sitting for a minute, and I think it's a really special piece of art. So I'm hoping that we'll see it, and it will have a soundtrack release. I think through Water Tower Records. Knock on wood, assuming it comes out. Paltrocast.